Greetings, dear people of God at Trinity and beloved friends beyond. Thank you for joining me for this week's reflection from the other side. Earlier today, Michael passed along a quote from a friend who suggested that I might find it meaningful. It's from Henry Nouwen's The Wounded Healer. Nobody escapes being wounded. We're all wounded people, whether physically, mentally, or spiritually. The main question is not how can we hide from our wounds so we don't have to be embarrassed, but how can we put our woundedness in the service of others? When our wounds cease to be a source of shame and become a source of healing, we have become wounded healers. Meaningful? That quote transported me to another time in my life. It sent me down to our dining room library to scan the shelves unsuccessfully for this dog-eared and treasured book that led me to my vocation as a priest 45 years ago and has kept me company along my priestly path ever since. Nouwen was a professor of pastoral theology at Yale Divinity School when I was at Yale as an undergrad, and headed, I thought, for medical school, because I've always felt called to be an instrument for healing in some way. Although in those days I thought of myself as a follower of the Reverend Bill Coffin and his activism in the name of the Prince of Peace, I found myself sneaking into Nouwen's standing room only lectures. He offered a theology of service to humanity that recognized that the fundamental suffering in humanity, in our world, our generations, our neighbor, and ourselves, is a way to serve as a healing source for all, including ourselves. He spoke to me in ways I didn't even understand then. Although I couldn't put my hand on my copy, I Googled the top 20 quotes, of course, and I found that they spoke to me now on the other side, personally, powerfully, and prophetically, more than ever before. If I loaned that book, The Wounded Healer, to you, could I get it back? I'll be reflecting more on the image of the wounded healer in the next few weeks for Holy Week approaches and Easter dawns. Frederic Beekner, another source of inspiration in my life, is also someone I have not visited in a long time. In his memoir, Telling Secrets, in which he talks movingly about secrets his family has kept, Beekner writes, I talk about my life because on the one hand, hardly anything could be less important. On the other hand, hardly anything could be more important. My story is important not just because it is mine, but God knows it is because if I tell it anything like right, the chances are you will recognize in some ways it is also yours. Maybe nothing is more important than that we keep track, you and I, of these stories of who we are, where we've come from, and the people we've met along the way. It is precisely through these stories that God is made known to each of us most powerfully and personally. Through our God-given memories, the sufferings and the joys, the sad things and the glad things, God can become a source of wisdom and strength for what lies ahead. Memory makes it possible for us both to bless the past, even those parts of it that we have always felt cursed by, and also to be blessed by it. God meets us at those moments at which, for better or worse, we find ourselves being most human, most ourselves. And if we lose touch with those moments, if we don't stop to notice what's happening to us and around us and inside us, we run the tragic risk of losing touch with God too. Back to Nouwen. My three biggest takeaways from The Wounded Healer were the importance of connecting with our own brokenness, our woundedness, the importance of hospitality, and the importance of suffering and loneliness. First takeaway. Hemingway wrote, "The world breaks everyone, and afterward many are strong at the broken places." This is what happened to my father. He became strong at the broken places. A year after his arrival as rector of All Saints by the Sea in Santa Barbara, my father's first wife, Mary, was killed in an automobile accident. She died in my father's arms. He had been driving. Although he was not responsible, he always felt that there was something he might have done to save her. His life went on. He and my mother were married. My twin and I were born, and 2 other siblings. And my father became a renowned, remarkable pastor. He had become strong in the broken places. He used his words to give comfort and strength to others simply by listening and understanding. I now can say from my heart, and know it to be true, that my wounds, my brokenness, my cancer are what make me able to look at you, my brothers and sisters, in the eyes and say with all my heart, yes, I know the desert seems endless, but God is there, and I am with you, and we will make it out. No one says that we do not know where we will be 2, 10, or 20 years from now. We can know that we suffer, and that sharing the suffering can help us move forward together. My second takeaway from the Wounded Healer is the importance of hospitality. Nouwen speaks of the space of hospitality, the space we provide that it is uninterrupted by us, so that others may find the time and space for healing with us. Practicing this requires building space into the day, time and attitude where our regular familiar routines can be disrupted. Who was it who said God is in the interruptions? This space we keep open for the Spirit to fill, to take an older neighbor to the grocery store, to make room for a family displaced by a flood or a refugee crisis, or to drop off fresh flowers, or walk the dog, or wake up far too early to drive me to radiation. Right here in front of us, right in our church and in our communities, there are some who suffer the wounds of loneliness, depression, misuse, abuse, illness, an unforgiven past. Your response may be, so what can I do for these people? I'm too busy. I am inadequate. The truth is, I am wounded too. My response to you would be, exactly. That's the point. That's the reason. You are the one. We are all the ones to help, as well as to be helped. Each one of us has the gift of being a wounded healer because we all experience woundedness. This is what being a wounded healer is all about. Being able to reach out and identify with all who are wounded and say, I have been wounded too, but this time I can help. How can I help? Third, I was impressed by Nouwen's insistence that loneliness and suffering have a place of purpose. Loneliness, he says, is something that Christ does not take away, but something that Christ protects and cherishes as a gift to us. In the past months, I've spent more time awake and alone than ever in my life, but I have found a deeper understanding of myself through my aloneness. I would not have chosen to walk through this season of suffering, but I know that in my time alone, I've gotten to learn what it means to rely on God and God alone. There was nowhere else to turn, no one else to turn to in the darkness of a cancer diagnosis, of nights awake and days awake, exhausted, nauseated, aching, afraid, and yes, angry. I remember moments when I sensed a presence. And it is that experience, I think, that the author of Psalm 131 is trying to describe. O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. But I have calmed and quieted my soul, like a child quieted at its mother's breast, like a child that is quieted is my soul. O Israel, your hope in God is now and forever. What if, recognizing our own woundedness, the woundedness in others, in our country, and in our world, we strive to become wounded healers, not just allowing but inviting the suffering we all share to bring us together and to set us free. Amen.